Hello and welcome to Trey's personal top 10 of 2017. Before we get started on the actual top 10, I want to give three nominees a quick shout out because there were three games that were really, really good. And there were a lot of games that were really, really good that just didn't make it on my top 10 list. Actually, four games, I'm sorry. Those are Hollow Knight, Resident Evil 7, Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2, and Super Mario Odyssey. I think all four of those games are really solid. In any other year, they definitely would have been on my top 10. But this year or last year, I suppose, was 2017, which is one of the best years that video gaming has ever seen, in my opinion. All 10 of the games that I'm about to mention have kept me going for many, many, many hours. And as an RPG fan at heart, you will see quite a few RPGs on this list. So please be prepared for that. So with that said, we will transition into gameplay, as I will show you guys some gameplay from all of these games that were my favorite games of the year. There will be some spoilers. So what I will do is I will tell you the name of the game and talk about why I love it so much and why it's one of my top 10. And in that conversation, there will be spoilers. So I will actually have a timestamp in the description after I say the name of the game. If you don't want to hear me talk about it and have any spoilers in it, please go ahead and just skip ahead to the next. But I'm going to try and keep most of the spoilers out of the conversation. I just know that there could be some that leak in. With that said, though, number 10 for me is Gundam Versus. Gundam Versus is a game that I have put so many hours into this year that I have... Man, I don't even know how many hours I've dropped into Gundam Versus now. And that's not even just playing for the show, just playing personally. We obviously have a bunch of different shows that revolve around Gundam Versus. We have 1v1s, 2v2s, Staying Alive, the Suit Breakdown. We have the roster overview, which is obviously going to get an update when all the DLC characters are out. But with all that said, Gundam Versus for me is exactly what I wanted it to be. It is, except for some of the cast choices, it is Gundam Extreme Versus, but on PS4 with great graphics, great 60 frames per second most of the time, tons of options, all the music's there, an English release with English menus. It's exactly what I wanted it to be for the most part, and I absolutely love it. Just the ability to play as some of my favorite suits across the entire Gundam franchise, and most of them have really cool movesets too. There's some stinkers here and there, but there's always going to be. With that said, though, Gundam Versus absolutely makes it as my number 10 on the list, and I can't imagine it not being on my list. So number 9 for me is Super Robot Wars V, and longtime viewers of the channel will know that I absolutely adore Super Robot Wars. It's a series that none of the rest of the crew really like that much. Chase has given one Super Robot Wars game, Super Robot Wars OG, The Moon Dwellers, a shot, and he enjoyed the time that he spent with it. But I absolutely love strategy RPGs, and Super Robot Wars is strategy RPGs meets Super Robot anime, and mecha anime in general. And so it of course, was going to hook me, but Super Robot Wars V is... Man, it's real good! And the stuff they do with the main character, Soji Murakumo, I haven't been this invested in a main character in a Super Robot Wars game since Toya Shiun and Calvino Coolidge from J. And just to see the way that the story grows, and everything to do with 9, and all of the reveals at the end. Not even to mention the fact that it was the first game to have the space battleship Yamato in it. And yes, there were some series I would have loved to see in there, but what we got, I was so impressed with. I enjoyed Cross Ange, and I normally really dislike Cross Ange, because I think the anime is not that great. It did really well with Eva and working Eva in with everything else, and it's just really good. And I feel like that's kind of a weak argument, but especially with the games that it snubbed to get on this list. But I absolutely adore Super Robot Wars V, and that's not even counting Velt and Lottie, two new original characters, as well as Soji, that are just amazing. I loved Velt. And the way that all these characters work off of each other, every single time it's done well, I'm impressed, and this time impressed me even more. So now I'm even more excited for Super Robot Wars X. Keep it up, guys. It was great. Next up is Neo. And Neo is a controversial title for a lot of people because Neo doesn't have a lot of enemy variety. And Neo doesn't have a lot in terms of story. The story is there, but it's not amazing. But what Neo has instead is gameplay. And I think the gameplay in Neo is absolutely amazing. Is it difficult? Oh, yes. Very much so. But it can also be broken. And if you break it in the right ways, it can be broken where it's not I'm a god emperor walking through the land. This is now resource management. And I am playing a resource management game that is also about killing demons. Neo, I've gone back now on my third playthrough. And in a year where I was struggling to make time for games that I adore, like Yakuza 0, who I didn't even give a runner-up for because I haven't finished it yet. Neo somehow got me to put 3 playthroughs in. And yeah, I'm on my third playthrough and I haven't finished it yet, but no other game this year got me to do that. And for that alone, I think it deserved a spot on this list. But I love playing Neo. When I'm not playing Neo and I'm playing something else, there's a small part of my mind that goes, we could be playing Neo right now. I'm like, yeah, you're right, we could. It's amazing. And yes, I'm a Souls fan. Yes, I'm a fan of Japanese mythology and of that series of weaponry and even the Chinese tonfa. I love those. And getting to play as those with a Souls-like is great. And is it a perfect Souls-like? No, absolutely not. But I love it. I'm a big fan of loot games already, so of course I was going to like Neo. And I was honestly surprised to see where it fell for me. If you go back and check the podcasts leading up to the end of the year, I was very sour on Neo for a long time. But updates came through, and they fixed some of my biggest problems with the game. And it won me over. It honestly did. I didn't think it was going to. And it reminds me a lot, I'm obviously comparing it to Dark Souls 1 is the biggest crime I'll ever commit on YouTube. But it reminds me a lot of my feelings on Dark Souls 1 at the time. Where at first I absolutely hated Dark Souls 1 because it was too difficult and I didn't understand and I felt like I was just being punished everywhere I went. And now I look back and go, you idiot. The game was trying to teach you things. So, yeah, Neo. It's great. Number 7 for me was Pyre. And Pyre is just amazing. I don't think there's ever going to be a game for me, even amongst Supergiant games, that fits exactly where Pyre did. Because Pyre, for me, is such an astounding achievement in the term of music and artwork and just what it is able to do with such a simple use of dialogue. Yes, it does a very visual novel style thing, and so does Fire Emblem and many other RPGs over the years. But it also matches that up with the ability to make choices, with the ability to check basically like a dictionary for the terms, the same way you can in Super Robot Wars V, actually, except it gives you a blurb from another character on it as well. So it's constant world building, trying to lead you back into the story, even while you're trying to figure out what this thing means. The game is telling you, well, here's what it means, but we're also giving you a little bit of character dialogue at the same time. And it all comes into this nice little package that is wrapped around a sports game, and I hate sports games. And it won me over in a way that I expected it to because it's Supergiant. But after playing the first couple rounds, I was like, this Spirit Basketball is okay. I want to know more about the story. And by the end of it, I was like, no, I love both of these things equally. And man, that soundtrack. Oh, that soundtrack is so good. The different versions of the soundtrack based on who you're fighting and when you're fighting them. Just, Never to Return matched up with any of the enemies that you go up against is an entirely different song, and I love that. Love it. So yeah, Pyre is definitely my number 7. Number 6 for me is Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. And you may say, that's an expansion. It doesn't count. I don't care. I love Final Fantasy XIV. And Stormblood was an expansion that gave me exactly what I wanted it to. It made me fear a primal again in an MSQ fight. It made me care about these characters. And yes, I know RPGs, you always care about the characters, right? Well, no, you don't always care about the characters. And coming to care for Gosetsu and Hien and everything to do with the Azim Steps, which honestly I would have been fine if there was an expansion just dedicated to the Azim Steps. And that's not even close to all the expansion had to offer, because it gave us one of the best villains in Final Fantasy, Xenoshie Galvis. And yeah, Xenoshie Galvis is a guy who just wants a good fight. That's all he cares about. He'll do anything he has to because he's too strong and he wants a good fight. But guess what? That's a great villain in my opinion, because he's not out for world domination. He doesn't care about, slaughtering everything until he's the most powerful. He just wants a challenge because he's too OP. And because Square won't nerf him, he did what he did. And it's so good. I love everything about the dynamic between the Warrior of Light and Xenoshie Galvis. And that's not even count everything else that goes on with the Butcher and with, the Resistance. I immediately remembered people that don't make it and got super upset again. It was a really fun story that I'm definitely going to look back on and enjoy. But it also subverted my expectations in a way that I didn't expect. And that's not even counting getting Red Mage and Samurai out of it, which are two very fun to play classes. And obviously they're everywhere now, but I really enjoyed them. And then of course you have all the class stories going from 60 to 70, and getting to do, as a Dragoon, getting to do the level 70 Dragoon story quest, where you pair up with somebody again. It was so cathartic. I love Final Fantasy XIV, and Stormblood did not let me down. And I'm thinking about the Garlemald hymn now, and it's just, from Aldenard to Authored. Oh, man. Number 5 is Persona 5. And some of you may be already bringing out your pitchforks and getting your tomatoes ready, because how can it be number 5 on the list? But no, there's some games that I think deserve to be higher. Persona 5 was amazing. The style, the music, the art, the gameplay. It's so good. The story. I really enjoyed the story. And I know there are a lot of people that go, oh, it's a Persona game. The story kind of, loses its tension towards the end. No, I don't think so at all. I think actually the story ramped up towards the end. My biggest issue with the game were that some of the palaces seemed to drag on for a while. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. I hear a lot of people saying that this cast is the weakest of the Persona cast. I 100% disagree. I think this cast is really good. Are they as good as 3 or 4? Maybe not. I personally think they stand toe-to-toe with them. But I love Ryuji and Makoto, Yusuke, Haru, latest she comes into the story. I love all of these characters. And to be able to see them develop along with your main character, to be able to literally get a clear and definite example of what happens when you get somebody to all the way to 10 on their Confidant, which is just their social link. At the end of the game, getting to see that extra cutscene because you had those level 10s, it's just, oh man. And then how it all wraps around to a line that's used early on in the game when they first see the first palace. That's real good. That's real good. And let's not even count the individual character stories like Hifumi's and the everything to do with the gun store and the politician whose names are unfortunately completely out of my mind right now. I want to say Date and I don't know. He's the sun persona. Can't think of his name. It's going to really bother me and I'm going to get upset with myself for not remembering it. But just those side stories alone, that's not even counting Takemi and Kawakami. It's just, man, they're so good. You may have noticed from this list by now, but for me, the character stories, the characters and the cast of these games are what really drive a game home for me. And the way those character stories work out. And Persona 5, I think, was amazing at that. Next up is number 4, Tales of Berseria. And speaking of character stories, I didn't expect when I started playing, after playing Tales of Zestiria and really not liking it, but having Tales of the Abyss as one of my 4 favorite games of all time, I didn't expect to go into Berseria and like it as much as I did. Because I had been told that Berseria was the story of revenge, and that Velvet could be kind of an edgelord. I was like, well, here we go. Edgelords are my least favorite type of character. This is not going to be great. I guess I'll just sit with it because I love Tales games, and there are good character moments along the way. I'll just deal with it. I was blown away. Velvet is not an edgelord. Velvet has some moments where she's very revenge-centric, but I honestly think most people would if they were thrown into her situation. And to see her slowly grow across the adventure from being driven on revenge to instead still caring about her revenge, but also about all the other people she's encountered. Not all of them, but the people that are with her. That's such an amazing journey. And it's not just her journey either. All of the main 6 have their own arcs, basically, that go throughout the story, with Eisen and Captain Eifried, with Rokuro and his brother, with, Fee, and Eleanor, and that's not even counting Best Girl Magilu. And they all have these slowly growing arcs that don't even just involve the 6 of them. It also involves Dial, and Kamoana, and Medusa, and Kurogane, and Prince Parcel. It brings in all these other characters that also develop over the course of the story. And by the end of the game, everyone's changed. Everybody's got development. Everybody's had to do things they didn't want to do, or became somebody they didn't used to be. And when you reach the end of that story, you feel it. Those characters are going to continue on their journey, but you're not a part of that story anymore. And when I look back in the coming years, starting to get emotional, when I look back in the coming years on characters, these characters are going to stick with me. Because I love these characters. I love Dial, and Kurogane, and Medusa, and Kamoana, and Eisen, Rokuro, Magilu, Eleanor, Velvet, and Fee. And the way that the game ends, the way that everything comes together, it's so powerful. Because it's not a good ending. I won't spoil anything specific, but it's not a good ending. But it's also exactly the kind of ending that I think those characters needed. Is it the ending I wanted them to have? No. But it's perfect. And I love that. I'll get off my soapbox now, and we'll move to number 3, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. I know. It's become a big thing of Zelda wins everything. But Zelda got so much acclaim this year for a reason. Breath of the Wild is an amazing game. Is the combat that great? No, not really. The combat's probably the weakest part of the game. And that's not even to do with just the breakable weapons thing. It's the fact that it's missing a ton of the options that some of the previous 3 Zeldas had when it comes to learning new sword moves and things like that. But this game is not about combat. This game is about exploration. And if you had told me at the start of this year that I was going to play a Zelda game, that it wasn't the characters in the world that meant something to me, it was the world itself that meant something to me, I'd have told you were crazy. I love the old Zelda worlds. Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Field that wraps into Zora's Domain and has Kakariko Village over there across the bridge. All that's great. You know, A Link to the Past, and I see the map in my mind and how everything connects, and the witch's house, and Zora's Domain up there. But Breath of the Wild's world is a vast, explorable Hyrule with stuff everywhere, and some of that stuff is worthless, like the Korok seeds. Honestly, I could never see another Korok seed in my life and be happy. Because collecting them all was a huge pain, and I never should have done it. but I loved the world enough that I didn't care. Finding shrines or finding Korok seeds, those were just the physical rewards. It was finding that area, finding that hidden spot, finding the spot behind the waterfall, or underneath that bridge, or breaking open doors that I didn't realize were there. Finding the labyrinths, or the mazes, or the circles on the ground, and realizing there's something to do here. And getting excited, not because, oh hey, here's another thing I have to do, but because I gotta figure out where this is. Was it back over that hill I just came over? Was it under those trees? Where is it? Oh, man. I think about the world, the map itself became like a character for me. Because as I was exploring it and learning more about it, it felt like I was getting a full story in this is a Hyrule that has been left to rot, where the people are struggling to survive. This is a post-apocalyptic Hyrule. But it's the most colorful Hyrule we've ever seen. I love it. I absolutely love the game. Were there things I would change? Absolutely. Let me stable that stall horse. Make that final fight mean something more than it does. Maybe take Zelda's voice actress back into the booth and have her re-record a couple of those lines. Some of her stuff is real good. But man, if Hollow Knight had made it on this list, it would have been about the exploration as well. But when you're exploring in Breath of the Wild, like in Hollow Knight, when you hear the cartographer, when you hear Cass, and you just hear that accordion going, oh man. Or when Sidon first sees you, and you have that whole exchange, the game is built around those moments. And were there as many of those as there probably should have been? I don't know. Some of the emergent gameplay moments aren't as impactful as those. But what I did get was more than enough for me. I absolutely adore The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And were it not for two other games, it would have been my game of the year, easily. But two other games came out this year. Speaking of number 2, it's Xenoblade Chronicles 2. You may say, well, Trey, it was such a big game that came out at the end of the year, and you love JRPGs, so of course you love Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I'll say, yeah, that makes sense. And it is a very large game that I finished this morning. Last night. Early this morning. The point is, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is the only game this year that has a clock on it that I can see how many hours that I put 198 hours into. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild I put 102 into. Nier Automata I put 86 into. Persona 5 I put 94 into. I went back and checked all those numbers before this video. But Xenoblade Chronicles 2 I put over 180 hours into it. Were all those hours great? No, a lot of them, probably at least 14 of those hours are in menus. Doing affinities, doing blade openings, doing core crystal opening, that is, doing merc missions, and sending people out and getting people back, and managing inventory and pouch items, like powering up arts and equipping accessories, doing stuff with shops. But even that stuff I still kind of enjoyed. Because I'm a person that enjoys small details like that. The world of Xenoblade is amazing. The story of Xenoblade is amazing. The characters of Xenoblade are amazing. Every single rare blade has its own quest. Some of them have quests and heart-to-hearts. And is it too hard to pull rare blades? Yes, sometimes. Very much so. But at the same time, the rare blades and the blade system is such an intriguing system that I just wanted to learn more about these characters. To have everything that happens with praxis and theory, and how all of that turns out, spins everything with Vess. It drives home that these blades, they'll either have it great or terrible, but their lot in life is set. And the difference between blades and humans, and that humans get to make their own choice how they live their life, and blades seemingly don't. But then, over the course of the game, to have it driven home that blades are alive, aren't you? Of course you get a choice. And then the way it connects to Xenoblade Chronicles 1... Okay, I'm in all spoilers now, because I need to talk about this. Because I have to talk about this. And if you don't want to be spoiled for anything else in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, skip ahead to the next timestamp. It'll be about the number one, my favorite game of this year, of 2017 that is. The fact that you are finishing the story arc from Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and can actually hear Shulk say, "We will use our power to fell a god." Because half of Klaus is Zanza that Shulk is fighting at the exact same time that you are beating Malos. It's amazing. It's so brilliant. And then the scene with Rex and Pyra, or Mithra, or whichever name you decided to call her by. I went with Mithra. But the scene with the two of them at the bridge, where she knows she's got to go back, and he's figured out she's going back, and is demanding people let him go. Demanding it. But nobody will take him across. Because this was her choice to make. There's so much emotion in that scene. That's not even counting the final scene. With that song in the credits that gets you at first by making you go, oh yeah, they're never going to be together again, are they? That's why this song has these lyrics. And then at the end of the song, you figure out the lyrics also mean something completely different. It's like, oh! That's not even to count how great the cast is. Rex is so much fun. His limitless optimism and his sassiness and his desire to tell everybody the Salvager's code to the point where he will face a literal god in his world and talk about the Salvager's code. You have Nia, who, by the way, was amazing throughout the entire story. Her voice actress did an amazing job, and Nia was just great. You have Tora. Tora, probably my favorite Napon in the series now. It was Hero Pon Ricky before this, but man, Tora was great. And Morag. Morag is amazing. I love her character design. I love her voice acting. I love her style of weaponry. I love her relationship with Brigid. I love that she refuses to give up. Like, Morag is great. And then Zeke. My man Zeke. Ultimate Lightning Sword Max. Oh, man. Lightning Fury Sword. I'm sorry. I love these characters so much. And that's not even counting all the great blades and their stories. Like Dagas. Or, man, Vandom and Rock. Like, as I mentioned, the stuff with Vess and Theory and Praxis. The stuff with Azami. Except for Ursula. Her stuff is... I like her character arc. I just really hate her affinity chain. I think everybody kind of hates her affinity chain now. But this game was amazing. And the soundtrack. When I got to More Ordain and heard the day theme, I was blown away. I literally set my controller down and was like, what is this theme? And then when I get to Tantal later, and I hear the main theme of Tantal... What? How is this music so good? I absolutely adore Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And were it not for one other game that came out in the year 2017, it would have been my game of the year. But number one is Nier Automata. And Nier Automata is extremely special to me. Because, obviously, people who've listened to the channel know that I loved the first Nier. I absolutely adored the first Nier. It's one of my favorite games of all time, despite the fact that it plays terribly. Nier Automata not only fixes the gameplay problem, but also continues the story of Nier. I'm going to try not to cry here, but I'm probably going to cry. Just be ready for that. Viewers of our channel know that I'm very emotional. Nier Automata is one of the greatest games I've ever played. Not just because it does something that no game has ever really done before it. Not just because it does something that no other medium could do except video games, although that is definitely up there for me. Those moments always mean a lot to me when video games do something that nothing else could do. But because it made me a part of the game. And it made me emotionally invested, not just in the characters, but in my own efforts. And if you want to hear me gush about Ending E, go watch our Best Moments of 2017 video. It's one of the last ones we talk about. And it is... Ending E alone would have put this game at my number one for the year. But that's not all Nier Automata has. And before I get into full spoilers, if you don't want to be spoiled, play Nier Automata. Or watch Patrick's playthrough. Because he's loving the game. And we're going to have this playthrough on this channel where you can get all the way caught up to the end of this amazing game. But play Nier Automata if you can. If you can't, and you don't care about spoilers, learning about 2B and what her real designation was, seeing 9S go down this road of vengeance and madness and loss, and how he devolves into just screaming at A2 because he doesn't have anything else left. This character that when you're introduced to him is just... You should check to make sure it's dead next time, ma'am. And then the relationship that forms between him and 2B, and you find out that it's been forming over and over and over and over and over and over again between the two of them, and she's been forced to kill him every single time. The reason why she doesn't want to call him Nines is because it's a nickname that he's given her every single time. But no matter how many times, he continues to fall for her anyway. And then when finally she's the one that dies instead of him, he's driven completely mad by it. He only wants to kill A2 for killing 2B. To the point where he's finding out all these terrible revelations and everything's been unveiled before him, and it makes him care even less as the Watchers, or whatever the machine programs are, the machine life forms, very similar to the Watchers, continue to throw 2B clones at him, and he ruthlessly kills them. Because they're not 2B. She's dead. Finally gets to the top of the tower, and A2 tries to talk to him, and he commands his own pod to be quiet. So that he can fight her. So that he can kill her. And when the final blow comes out, and A2 is stabbed, and lays back quietly, and 9S is stabbed, and is screaming and writhing in a puddle of his own blood. I realized how much this character meant to me. And then the game said, hey, do you want to save them? And I said, yeah, I sure do. And I beat it. And I saved them. And I gave up my data to help someone else. And then I replayed the entire game. And then I replayed Ending E multiple times. Nier Automata is a game that does not come out very often. It's a game that I don't expect to find the like of anytime soon. I love to play video games. And I love it when a video game story grabs me and makes me invested in the characters and makes me want to see how things turn out. But when a game makes me a part of the team and asks me to save the team, there's no feeling like that. So there was never going to be anything else at the top of this list. Even as I played every other game this year, just about, desperately trying to beat them all, Nier Automata was my game of the year. I hope you've enjoyed my list. Look forward to the others' lists whenever they finish them. I've been Trey. This has been the Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum that video games have to offer.